All right, here we go.
Yeah.
Don't want no hot mic.
Not afraid of anything.
All right, first off, all the way down, we have Lieutenant Governor Beckley Hall Long.
Thank you.
Next, we have businessman Bobby Williamson. Next, we have National Wildlife Federation CEO Colin Omer. Next to him, we have our Newcastle County Executive, Matt Meyer. And finally, on the end, we have State Representative and Minority Leader, Ramon. And our moderator for the night. And next up is Planning Committee member Renata. No? Ayana Khan from the Black Chamber. There you go.
Oh, it's not working? Oh, okay. Good evening, everyone.
Hello. Good evening.
Okay, good evening. My name is Ayana Khan, and I am the founder, president, and CEO of the Delaware Black Chamber of Commerce. I want to welcome you guys tonight, and thank you for joining us. You can be anywhere tonight, but you're here, so thank you for our important Economic Development Candidate Forum. So we're delighted to welcome you here this evening and to welcome the gubernatorial candidates to come together to discuss their vision and their plans for economic development in our great state of Delaware. This event is hosted by the Delaware Economic Development Collective. We are a non-partisan group dedicated to advancing economic growth and creating equitable opportunities within historically disinvested communities. Our collectives include Cinnaire. Cinnaire, raise your hand. Cornerstone West CDC, the Delaware Black Chamber of Commerce, Metropolitan Wilmington Urban League, True Access Capital, Wilmington Alliance, and our amazing host, the Wilmington Public Library. And for those of you who could not join us in person tonight, we're pleased to offer a live stream of the forum courtesy of DETV. All right, so again, thank you for being here. Thank you for your commitment to Delaware's economic future. And we're looking forward to an engaging, informative discussion. So let's begin.
Hello, everyone. I'm Sarah Lester. I'm the president of Cornerstone West Community Development Corporation. We do affordable housing and also oversee West Side Grows Together. So thanks for having me as part of the collective, and thank you all for being here tonight. My brief role right now is just to review the ground rules very quickly and then introduce our moderator. So this is a candidate forum. We will have Kerwin go over some of the kind of specific rules, but there will be opening remarks for 90 seconds for each candidate, 6 to 8 questions that were prepared by the collective, and then 3 to 4 questions from the audience, depending on our timing. And then there will be closing remarks from each of the candidates. And so this is a candidate forum. It's not a debate. There will be a timekeeper in the front. You might see some cards going up and down from the lovely Deanna. Thank you. And the focus of this event is economic development. So without further ado, I will I have the pleasure of introducing our moderator, Kerwin Gaines. He is the esteemed host of Delaware TV's political talk show, The Agenda. And in addition to his media role, he brings over 25 years of leadership in cybersecurity and small business management to the table. And he also has experience across all 3 counties, deep roots across all 3 counties, and currently is an adjunct professor at where he received his MBA at Wilmington University. So if you could please join me in welcoming our moderator this evening, Kerwin Gaines.
Hello, everyone.
Hello.
Not sure which mic is which. I think it's this one. Okay. Thank you for coming out tonight. I'm not sure. Is this the last one?
No.
No? They were quick. They were like, no,
No.
this isn't the last one. But I'm very excited that everybody's out here, part of the process. This is my first year moderating, and it's been a pleasant surprise from the turnout. Also, the questions that we're receiving on the index cards. Everybody have their index cards? Right? So make sure that those are some great, nice, loving questions, right? We've had a couple mayoral debates here where they were rated PG-13, very close to R. So we want to try to avoid those. We want to keep them from being personal, but keep them as being as poignant as possible. I think that the gubernatorial debates have always been spirited and discussions, and I know that this will be the same. Previously we met in a church, and we are not doing that this time. We are in the public library. So I am hoping for the same decorum from the audience, okay? In regards to that, we've had some heated discussions from the audience in the past, and we've had to take timeouts, and we do not want that to happen again. So I'm excited about the process. I'm excited to hear your questions. I'm excited to hear their answers to my questions and your questions. So with that being said, what do you say we get started with this discussion? All right. So we went over the rules. I'll go over them again just for clarity, if I can find them. If not, we'll skip and we'll just move forward. Sorry, I lost my place here. I apologize. We have the order in regards to, we did a little thing where we're drawing straws to see, not straws, but paper to see who goes first. I find that candidates are a little sticky about that, right? So when it comes down to it, we go to playground rules, and everybody picks a piece of paper, and Mr. Meyer was the person who chose number 1. I did not remember the order. Who had 2? 2, 3, 4, and 5. See, we're back on the playground, okay? So we know who goes what. We'll have that order. So the person who is, I don't want to say last, but the person who drew the last number will be the first person in closing remarks, okay? So we'll give them that opportunity. We're going to move into now opening statements. I believe that's 90 seconds. Correct me if I'm wrong. Okay, good. My memory served me correctly. Let's hear it for football with a helmet. So Mr. Meyer will begin opening statements with 90 seconds, okay? My time moderator, how you doing? Okay, ready to go. Okay, Mr. Meyer, opening statement.
Thank you, Kerwin. Thank you to the Delaware Economic Development Collective, and especially Jamar, Carl, the whole team at Wilmington Public Library, not just for what they do tonight, but for what they do every day. Thank all of you for coming out on a beautiful summer evening. My name is Matt Meyer. I'm a Wilmington kid, grew up here, went away to college and law school, had all the opportunities in the world, came back home, and then 10 years ago, I was a public school teacher on the east side of Wilmington. I taught 6th and 7th grade students, many of whom were experiencing unstable housing and gun violence in their neighborhoods. I was fed up with unfulfilled promises, too many elected officials and leaders coming to our school with lack of honesty, too many broken promises that were not fixing the vital issues that the families I taught were facing every single day. In my school, I saw public service, and among elected leaders, I saw too much self-service. So after knocking on nearly 10,000 doors 8 years ago, running up against special interests, I ran for and was successful to be county executive. I'm now the first county executive to be elected to the office since Chris Coons served. We've redefined county government. We've redefined economic development, getting money into communities. We've redefined policing to include behavioral health. We've redefined getting money directly into classrooms in ways that local governments never have before. We're eager to lead this state forward, to address the issues you're seeing every day in our schools, in our housing, in our healthcare, and I look forward to discussing those issues with you tonight. Thank you.
Next will be Bobby.
Hello, thank you for attending. I am Bobby Williamson. I am from Bridgeville, that's in Sussex County, down off the highway a little bit. So I have more of an outlook of what is happening in my area downstate and trying to progress to what is becoming of our state. We have to work together. We have to have the insight to come up with ideas of how the new age of Delaware can blend with the old age of Delaware, that we have to mend it together to keep Delaware as a whole, or we will lose the good parts of what we have here in our state. I am a business owner. I have 6 businesses that I do keep owner and operating of, and most of that is dealing with the construction. So when we talk about the housing and, of course, affordable housing and housing that is affordable, that is where I spend a lot of my time with thought and in trying to organize how to keep the communities together and to keep people in their homes through the community and through developing of the repairs that need to be done to existing structures to help people stay and live with their family and close to where their family and their heritage were originated. Thank you.
What I love about Bridgeville is it's the scrapple capital of Delaware, and people don't appreciate
Of the world,
it.
of the world.
I apologize, Mr. Meyer, of the world, being brought up on RAPA my entire life.
There you go. He's a good guy there. That's anybody like Scrapple, they're good.
I give kudos.
And to clarify, I won the Rapple Scrapple Shuffle 4 years ago. So we can take it on. Yeah, I love it.
Well, there's that. The next we'll have Mr. O'Mara.
Give me the fist. You got it.
Thanks, Kerwin. And actually, my Delaware journey actually started with a litmus test of whether I would eat Scrapple at Jimmy's, which I think had every code violation at the time. But the word went back to Leg Hall. The boy ate Scrapple. The boy's okay. And so I got confirmed by the state Senate. So my name's Colin O'Mara. I was Secretary of Natural Resources under Governor Markell from 2009 to 2014. I lived up to the road up 52 for a while here in the city. I run the National Wildlife Federation now, which is one of the largest environmental organizations in the country. I'm a girl dad. I have 3 young daughters that are 16 months and 7 years old and 12 years old. I'm a public school parent. I'm a youth coach. I coach at the YMCA. I coach basketball and soccer. A little better of a basketball coach than a soccer coach. And I got in for a pretty simple reason. I just think we're not doing right by our kids. We love to call ourselves the first state. We have overwhelming democratic control of pretty much everything. Yet, 95% of some of the kids in some of our schools can't read at grade level. The number of kids living in poverty right now is about 39,000 kids across the state, and yet we're a size that you can actually kind of address it if you have investment, if you have resources committed. We have one of the most inequitable funding formulas for education. We don't do enough to build wealth inside communities, especially intergenerational wealth. We've kind of paid lip service to things like environmental justice and kind of addressing some of the funding inequities in our state. And so I got into the race to try to talk about things that don't typically get talked about in political campaigns because, for a state that's had this level of democratic control for so long, we should be doing so much better in education and housing and healthcare and protecting our fundamental rights and climate change. We could do so much more with new leadership. So my name's Colin O'Mara, and I'm here to be a new generation of leader.
Thank you very much, Mr. O'Mara. Mr. Ramon.
Thank you. I would like to start off by saying, Colin, you are exactly right, and maybe that's why after 32 years we got to let the other party give it a shot, but that's another whole statement. I'm a lifelong Delawarean. I grew up here. I am a small businessman, opened my first business right here in Wilmington, Ramon's Flower Shops. Was fortunate, did that when I was 20 years old. Before we were 30, we had 7 stores. Then we had the Wilmington Florist Exchange, so we ended up with 3 different businesses in the city. So I understand the dynamics of building business in the city and working with the people in the community. I'm also a legislator. I've been fortunate to serve I served for 16 years, and I think 15 of those with Ruth Briggs King in the House. And what you learn is one of 42 in the House, or one of 41 in the House, is you learn the different dynamics of 41 different districts throughout our state. We have businesses that need certain things that we've just basically ignored. We have communities that need other things that have been just forgotten. And most important, we need education, because nothing works unless education is fixed. Stop putting Band-Aids on it and start setting up a way to move forward. But in that, being a guy who never even left the state, never been on an airplane till I was 20-something and married to go on a honeymoon, I'm a Delaware guy. I care about Delaware. I've watched our schools go over the years, 32 years of one-party rule from one of the best to one of the worst and one of the most expensive. I think we got to do better for our kids. We need to do better for our communities, and I thank you for letting us have this forum tonight.
Okay, I thought it was implied, but please silence cell phones as we're moving through this conversation with gubernatorial candidates, okay? All right. Mr. Ramon, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Next, we have our Lieutenant Governor, Bethany Holong.
Great. Well, good evening. It's awesome to be here on this lovely evening with you all. And we have a lot of fond work that we've done together here in this library. And to start, I just want to say thank you to those who've come out. Being a member of the House and the Senate, and I have been in the minority, Representative Ramon years ago, and having that experience as Lieutenant Governor, second in command, ready on day one, I'm thrilled to have a bold and innovative plan that I've come through the community, through listening tours, working in the community, really addressing education, economics, healthcare, quality of life. It is important that we have the equity in economics. We had our National Black Chamber president here not long ago. We'll talk more about that. For minority-owned and big business has to have equity. And education. I will be the legacy leader, I hope, to Birth to 5. That will be a long game changer for all equity for our students. Higher pay, reforming the education formula, we have to do that. I had the opportunity, being raised on a farm in Sussex, first to go to college. It's important that all of our children have that success and wraparound services. And housing. Really important, along with making sure that our entrepreneur feel is there in entrepreneurship and arts, and making sure healthcare. I could talk for hours as a career educator and a nurse. There are so many things that we're going to continue to do. We fought to keep retiree healthcare in the state. We're going to continue to work on new innovation. I hope tonight to share some of those innovations because it is through the community. Today, when I led my Latino leaders call, last week my Black leaders call, it is about why we're here tonight. So I look forward to the conversation. Thank you.
Thank you. We're going to move to the next question, and Mr. Williamson, I'm going to direct it towards you. Okay, we can start with you as number 2 on the list. Okay, I am going to give a little bit of courtesy here to everyone that is here on the I don't want to say the stand. Ooh, sorry. That everyone is here, all the gubernatorial candidates, because they've been asked this question several times at several events throughout the state. But I still think that it's poignant and it needs to be brought up here, and that is in regards to the cost of housing. Okay? The cost of housing around the state is extremely high. Equitable housing for all Delawareans is slimming. Our inventory is slimming. And one point that I'd like to bring up that I don't think they've brought up, and I haven't seen every moderated debate, believe it or not, but it seems as though other states are doing it better than us. Not only that, the red and the blue in other states are definitely doing it better than us. So my question is to whomever becomes the next governor of the state of Delaware, if you are to become Delaware's next governor, how can you assure me, and having my daughter here in the audience, that she will eventually be able to leave our house, okay, and be in an affordable place other than our home? And but what is it that we can do and to ensure that, what is the solution, basically?
Well, I have to come up with a lot of solutions because the problem does spiderweb out to many facets throughout the state. But from being in construction and dealing with the public and people trying to get their first homes and trying to have, like my son, same position, we have to get him a place to live to raise his family. It's fine that we want our families to expand and give us the grandchildren, but they need to do it under their own roof and have their own pride. Okay, 30 seconds. Anyway, my thing is that I'm coming up against, I can build affordable housings. Even with the price of materials gone up, I could still do it, other than we hit a roadblock of the litigations, the red tape that we have to meet, the codes, the overabundance of new rules to hurt the fact that somebody can have an affordable home. They make exceptions for the homeless in Georgetown. I'm sorry, I'm going to keep going. And we have to also go back to the single-wide mobile home possibilities and not limit that to a 10-acre lot. And thank you for giving me the few extra seconds.
No problem. Next, Mr. Romero.
No, thank you, Kerwin. And look, I mean, this is a crisis all across the state. It's not just a Wilmington problem. It's, in Newark, we see it at the beaches, we see it around different parts of Kent and Sussex as well. There's three major drivers that are jacking up house prices. The first one is actually the number of investors that are buying up residential properties and apartment complexes all across the country. And these aren't like somebody buying a house to flip it. These are like major equity funds that are buying just a huge amount of volume. We used to be maybe 10% that were buying up these kind of properties. Now we're like 25%. So, and that jacks up rent, right? Because all of a sudden the profit-making machines, and so it drives up prices for everybody. The second thing is that like the regulations that even Bobby and I are going to agree on this, we've made it incredibly hard to build affordable housing. It is so much easier to build a greenfield development for $400,000 homes in the middle of nowhere in a farm field and outside of Middletown than it is to build infill development here. So we got to make it easier. It's smarter for the climate. It's smarter on every level, but near existing infrastructure redevelopment. And then the third is we don't have predictable funding. The Carney administration made some big investments, but they were one-time investments. And so the places that Kerwin is talking about, some of the Republican states that are making progress with things like the historic tax credits and big investments, have to be predictable year after year, $30 to $50 million a year.
Thank you, Mr. Romero and Mr. Ramon.
Thank you, Kerwin. I believe you learn a lot of skills when you have businesses, especially when you have multiple businesses. So over 40-something years, I think one of the strongest attributes I have to bring to the table is problem resolution. This problem didn't start last year. This has been 32 years of building up. Around 20 years ago, I ran to be the county council president. As a Republican, that's unusual and it's often difficult to do. But I thought we needed to address this particular issue all the way back then. And what we did was we digested something called smart growth in all of our campaigning. Much to his credit, Senator Coons and myself both sort of preached the same thing. And when Chris was elected, he started digesting it. It was very important and very helpful. But smart growth was only one of three. We need to also do a very aggressive job at regulatory reform. There's so many regulations and it makes it so expensive for someone to build a home. And we also need to look at best practices of what communities and states around us are doing and try to digest them. Everybody has the right to enjoy the American dream of owning their own home.
Thank you.
Well, number one, we have to want to make the change with an ombudsman. We have to, as an ex-governor, we'll have an ombudsman. 24,000 units, we're shy. I have a plan, Bethany for Delaware, where we're going to bolster 2,400 more units. How that's also going to happen is private-public partnerships, tax credits. Yes, we put the largest investment ever, $110 million, in this past year, but it's more than affordable housing. It's housing that my nurses, my cops, and others can afford. It's changing the culture of DENREC and DELDOT, changing permitting. We know that some counties, people get log jammed, and it takes 2 to 3 years. That's an embarrassment. Working with home builders, we have to make it such that those incentives are there for all housing, senior housing, persons with disabilities. We have to be competitive. As your next governor, when we bring universal child care, that is a major impediment for young adults not buying a house. 80%, up to that many, haven't bought a home because of child care costs. We have to make sure we provide those other incentives, the wraparounds. And I have a clear vision as the next governor, and having chaired in the Senate the committee that dealt with housing and municipal plans, and we'll have to cut through that red tape. Thank you.
Thank you. I'd like to remind everyone that in the next 15, 20 minutes, we're going to collect those index cards, right? So please gather your thoughts, your nice, gentle thoughts, okay, and put those on those cards, and probably get past the one end. Somebody will come by and collect them, bring them up to me, and we'll begin to ask those questions, okay?
Can I answer the question?
I'm sorry, Matt. My apologies. My apologies. My apologies.
Reminds me of county council where they don't let me talk.
Sorry about that.
No, I get an extra 10 seconds.
Yes, you do. I was thinking about
listen,
index cards.
When I was a baby, my parents moved here, and they chose Delaware. And they chose Delaware primarily because with a couple kids, it was an affordable place to buy a house. It was an affordable place to raise a family. The cost of living was low. When I talk to families here in Newcastle County and across our state, and especially here in the city of Wilmington, so many people say that's just not true anymore. You know, when I started running for governor a little over a year ago, we traveled the state and we got so many ideas and heard so much, we actually wrote a book. We put together a book. And on page 21, there are extensive ideas that we're going to implement regarding housing affordability. We need to change our zoning code. There are sprawl codes across our state that we need to change. We need to provide additional assistance for first-time home buyers. We need to alleviate pressures on renters that are pressures like never before. We need to address the high cost of construction. And finally, and maybe most importantly, we need to provide assistance for our most vulnerable. Things like the Hope Center across our state. The Hope Center, which has provided housing to over 4,200 Delawareans. We need more of that for seniors and for people with disabilities as well.
My apologies again. Yes. The next question is in regards to ARPA funding. Okay. Funding from ARPA enabled historic investments in housing in the state of Delaware. However, without dedicated funding, this progress is fragile. Several states, including neighboring states, have created dedicated funding for affordable housing and development. As governor, would you support establishing a dedicated funding stream for affordable housing development? And if so, how would you work with the legislature to make it happen? Mr. O'Meara, this question is for you.
Great. No, thank you, Kerwin. Absolutely. We absolutely need a dedicated, kind of predictable funding stream. And the cleanest way to do it is just have a percentage of the realty transfer tax go into that fund. Because what's going to happen is the places that actually generate the most realty transfer taxes are some of the same places where affordability tends to be a challenge because there's more deal flow kind of moving through. And so, whether it's in Sussex trying to build more workforce housing near the beaches, whether it's up here when you're thinking about different types of folks that are facing affordability challenges, right now 109,000 families across the state are kind of overburdened by housing costs right now. We're going to need 20 to 30,000 additional units in the years ahead. And so the only way to do that is with predictable funding and then removing the barriers, dealing with these investor issues and some of the things I mentioned before. But, just one of Tom Carper's legacies was that he dedicated a small part of the realty transfer fund towards open space conservation and farmland preservation. We could do the exact same thing with the exact same mechanisms. There's been debates the last few years about whether we should lower that tax, and that's probably something that should be talked about. But imagine the support, bipartisan support from both sides, making sure that the dollars that came into the system stayed in those communities to build affordable housing. It would transform the system and be able to have 20,000, 30,000 units over the next decade.
Thank you. Mr. Ramon.
Kerwin, this is where that blend of being a business person and then also serving in the House really comes to fruition. We have done some amazing things in the House and in the Senate and passed to help our housing, many housing sectors and development. However, I am not in favor of being the highest transfer tax in the nation at 4%. We were at 3, we went to 4. I think that was terrible. I think the people who got hurt most were the first-time home buyers, the senior citizens, who then have to sell their home because they can't afford the property tax and move to another. We need to set up an environment where you solve problems by not creating another one. We cannot continue to assess monies to do and fix things when we've had 4 years of nearly $4 billion of extraordinary income in our state of Delaware. Where did the $4 billion go? I would say affordable housing is one of the top priorities. That $4 billion should go to $4 billion worth of solutions for those in need.
Thank you. Lieutenant Governor.
Wow, this is important. Housing is a right. This is what brought me to the dance of the legislature, taking care of homeless vets. It is something we have to do. We have to have a dedicated funding stream. I've served on that bond committee. I agree, Representative Ramon. It's more difficult. It's easy to sit here and make promises. We are going to absolutely look at things we haven't done. Medicaid waiver 1115s. That will provide incentives and help our most vulnerable in our communities, our elders, our disabled. We have invested $110 million into housing, but in talking with our home builders, there's a lot of red tape we have to take away. It's embarrassing that in North Carolina, they can renovate a downtown building in 5 months. Here, because of permitting, whether in cities or in our county, it takes 2 years. So let's cut the red tape. Let's get the budget. We'll put the money there. The funds are there. Show me your priorities. It's in your budget. We will be able to innovate and think out of the box. This is a right and something I have fought for, will continue to fight for in housing. It has to happen. ARPA dollars, Kingswood, Senator Huxtable, and many of you in this room know the 7 bills that we passed this past year, making game changers. We're on the path. More can come.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Mr. Williamson.
Well, any of our funded programs, we need to take a look at it real close. Make sure that the funding that we are providing for these programs are used in the proper manner. Make sure it isn't for high salary people that are running the associations, but that the money is actually being used to do the progress of the work that needs to get done. And I do believe that we have to do more for providing housing, and I don't mean state housing. I mean making homes accessible for families and people to be able to buy, rent, and to have a place to live, to raise their families, and to continue their lifestyle here in the state of Delaware, or they will leave the state. And when we have people leaving the state, then we're going to be off balance. We're going to have the elite, we're going to have the elderly, and then we won't have the people to support the state and do the functions that the state needs done daily to get this balance that we need to have and keep here in the state of Delaware. Thank you.
Mr. Meyer.
Thank you. According to the Housing Alliance of Delaware, right now, we need over 20,000 units of affordable housing in Delaware. According to demographic projections, in the next couple decades, we're going to need about another 30,000 housing units in Delaware. That's something like 50,000 housing units we're going to have to produce here. A dedicated funding source alone is not going to enable us to produce all these additional housing units. We need to get serious about regulatory reform. Make sure something like accessory dwelling units are encouraged, which means in your home or in your neighbor's home, if they want to add a unit, a rental unit, particularly in neighborhoods where affordability is a problem, they can add a unit and rent it out, have another source of income, and offer a low-cost rental. We partnered with Habitat for Humanity, which traditionally is a home buying program, to offer rental units in the city of Wilmington for $800 a month for 2 years while the renter was able to rehab their credit and go into a home buyership program. We can, through creativity, by putting our smart minds together here in Delaware, address this problem.
Thank you very much. In keeping with the housing crisis that we're in, I think it's fair to say it's a crisis. I know we're not doing rebuttals, but this is a follow-up to that question that I'm asking the folks here today. Why are other states doing it better than us? I've met most of you. I know, everyone has the degrees, and we have the leadership in Dover, and we're a small state. We're running about 1 million people, give or take, right? So I look at us as a great opportunity to do some great things in regards to testing and groups and all that other stuff. But why is it that we're just not doing well? I know a lot of people at home are wondering that question. I'm wondering that question, and I'm pretty sure it'll be on one of the note cards, so I'll beat them to it. As a follow-up, 1-minute follow-up, I would love to know your answer. Matt, we can start with you.
Great, thanks. There's a status quo in this state that does not want things to change. I was a 6th and 7th grade math teacher. It seemed like to me a lot of the stuff that needed to happen was relatively common sense. And then I got elected county executive, and I start to understand there are entrenched interests that do not want these problems to be fixed. And a lot of them have incredible control over the systems that are enabling people to fix them. Let me give you an example. The Rick Van Story Center, which some of you might remember right off Martin Luther King Boulevard, offered a tremendous opportunity for homeless people to have a place to stay. The YMCA here had a men's shelter for years. They both closed down. Everybody said, what are we going to do? The homeless population is spiking. I said, let's buy a hotel. People call me, elected officials, call me like I was crazy. The governor said, what are you doing, right? You got to elect someone who's going to stand up and take leadership, who's going to say these are urgent problems for people who are truly in need in our community, our friends and neighbors. This is Delaware. Let's fix this stuff.
Mr. Williamson, do you care to follow up?
Be glad to. There are many things that we have to look at into this and to talk about different things that have happened in the past. In my businesses, I've gone to a farm that had chicken houses and the support beams to hold the roof up about 8 to 10 foot apart, and they were covered with curtains and cardboard to individually house each little section for a family, not an individual, but a family. And there's probably about, say, 200 some people within these chicken houses living. And this is in Sussex County. And it's a pig farm, by the way. Anyway, the house had only one bathroom. So all these people were using the one bathroom. And me as a plumber, they were wondering why the ground was so wet and saturated and that they couldn't flush at certain times of the day. And, you know, you see this, and we have to make housing more accessible for the people that are of meager means. And there are ways to do that through allowing single-wide mobile homes to be congregated in certain areas. It don't mean we have to put them in an area that's going to make other people nervous, but there are
Thank you, Mr. Williamson.
that can. Thank you. A minute's not very long.
Appreciate it. We're finding out. Next, Mr. O'Meara.
I mean, right now in Dover, there's kind of two different policy processes. There's a process for the things that don't cost money, and then there's a process for the things that cost money. And you know, not to get too technical, but I'm kind of a nerdy guy, so I'll just indulge me just for a second. Things that don't cost money, we're really good at moving pretty quickly. You find bipartisan majorities in a lot of cases, or you're going to get the votes. Things that cost money, you know, things like the Inspector General bill this year, things like the free breakfast and school lunch for kids, go through a very different process. They go through committee, they typically pass in committee, then they go to something called the Appropriations Committee, where they die. And the reason they die is because when there's more money available, they're not as high priorities as other things. We need a governor that actually puts priorities like this in the governor's recommended budget at the beginning. So if somebody wants to take it out, they have to fight, the legislature fight to remove it, as opposed to hoping there's more money at the end of the day in May to then jam it in. It's the old analogy of like putting the big boulders in the canister first, because you'll never fit everything else in unless you start with the big stuff. Because we don't start with the big stuff first, we're not able to jam it in June, which means we're another year further behind. Places like Missouri, places like Illinois are making this a huge priority as a first day priority, not a last day priority.
Thank you, Mr. O'Meara. Mr. Ramon.
Simple answer, Kerwin. Other states are doing better than us because they have a better style of management and a different style of problem resolution. You should be looking at best practices. I don't know that we do that well, other than we're in the midst of COVID and we're looking at what New York or someone's doing. I don't know that that's the right solution. We need to simplify, consolidate costs, and reduce taxes so that people have the ability to have their money to be able to buy their homes. We need to bring the correct group of people together, the builders, the government, all those that would be most involved, and the outreach communities and nonprofits to be able to resolve this problem as we look at best practices being done in other communities. I will say two very quick things. I thought it's interesting. We're talking about regulatory reform and we're getting criticisms, but most of the regulatory byproducts are done at a county level, and we have a county exec who's been there a long time. I'm just curious why we haven't resolved some of those problems. We have one party running the county.
This is a follow-up and not a rebuttal.
I'm sorry. That's a good point. So I would like to say differently. If I were the governor, I would be working with the county council persons and the municipalities to be certain we're all working together rather than trying to give solutions and not.
20 minutes, ladies and gentlemen. It took 20 minutes for the first shot to be fired.
Okay, and I didn't get an answer yet.
You're right.
I guess can I have
Next
my minute?
is Lieutenant Governor Bethany Long.
For my minute, really important. I've made my career of public service working with mentally ill, homeless, and others. That is not the permanent answer. We have to, yes, have the shelters. We're all for it. I started the first shelter on March 13th, 2020 on the streets here, Sheraton, right here. We've worked through the state. Permanent housing has to start with municipal and county government regulatory changes. Also at the state, DELDOT, DENREC, you have to have a leader who understands where the log jams are. I understand those. Having led the municipal committees, leading and working on the bond committee, we have to be better. Montana and other states have had to step in. We have to look at our plus land use processes. If you talk to home builders, they're going to other states and not putting the affordable homes here because we've made so many roadblocks and barriers. I'm proud of the fact that we put the largest number in, 110 million last year with members of the General Assembly. That is truly a process, and it's easy to be on the outside. Having been in the General Assembly, sponsored over 1,000 bills and co-sponsored, these are really important topics and will be a top priority of mine. Housing is a right.
Thank you very much. We're going to continue with the housing question. And this is going to be in regards to eviction. I'm sorry, who did I forget? No.
Colin.
Oh,
Oh, no, we got him on.
whew,
We need more
did
coffee.
it again. I need more coffee. Right. And this is in regards to eviction. Eviction and housing instability has been shown by research to have major adverse consequences for individuals and families, especially for children. Delaware is facing an ongoing eviction crisis with the average statewide eviction filing rate of 11% over the past year, including rates of 11.6% in Newcastle County, 11.7% in Kent County, and 9.5% in Sussex County. This is nearly twice the national average for eviction rates. Again, we're not doing well. Delaware's 28% of all households are renters, 28%, and over 66% are considered very low income. Based on minimum wage and fair market rate for housing in Delaware, a person would have to work 76 hours per week or 1.9 full-time jobs in order to afford a one-bedroom rental home. If elected, what specific steps will you take to ensure housing stability, especially for those most vulnerable? This question is for Mr. Ramon.
Thanks, Kerwin. I would suggest right out of the gates, this is a much larger issue. You cannot just throw people out of homes and have them live on the streets, and I've watched it happen, and we've, in our personal family, have done our best to help. But the issue is good paying jobs. The issue is developing good schools that can teach children to read before they pass them to the next level. The issue is entrepreneurial environments. When I was 20 and walked into a bank and was able to get a loan, the only thing I was told was sell my car, and then they'd give me the loan, and I did everything they told me, and now have been very successful. They're the kind of things that will help prevent people from being evicted from homes. The support mechanisms around and the problems that are incurring, that are forcing people to end up not being able to make their rent is the problem, not the rent or the home. However, I do agree we need to have a much larger supply of homes, and this is built up for 32 years. We need to do better.
Thank you. Lieutenant Governor.
Wow, this is such an important topic to me. I work on the streets as an undercover lieutenant governor. I go to the hotel rooms, I go to the houses. We got to have quality homes to begin. Landlord-tenant codes are complicated, but our children should not be on the streets. We need to do preventative measures as well, counseling, preventative services, substance use wraparound services to parents and others, and making sure they have those high-paying jobs, as Representative Ramon said. It's got to be about the resources. Having rental assistance programs that are expanded, and I see this all the time chairing the Board of Pardons, and I am passionate about justice and environmental justice and housing justice. If we put in place prevention and we put the services and wraparound and people have childcare that's free because they have kids that are getting care, it is going to be a game changer, and you need a leader who understands these issues. Housing brought me to the dance when I was a new representative, working with now General Vavila and others with veterans. We must do better, and I'm excited about the opportunities. I'm excited about working with the General Assembly on some legislation in this area. Thank you.
The lovely chime. Mr. Meyer.
Yeah, I mentioned earlier over 4,200 Delawareans in 3.5 years, our most vulnerable, have spent at least one night at the Hope Center. About 500 families have transitioned through the Hope Center's 90-day program, sometimes a little more, sometimes a little less, from chronic homelessness into permanent stable housing. 500 families, 500 households. Why not more? With all due respect, Mr. Ramon, it's not the jobs. As to paraphrase Bill Clinton, it's the housing, stupid. There's just not enough affordable housing. There's not enough. We need to look at laws that protect tenants, that make sure that when tenants want to get Section 8 vouchers, there's no bias against them. We have to make sure there's emergency rental assistance programs. We have to make sure that we prohibit landlords from eviction without good cause. And we also have to crack down on large private equity firms that now are getting these large loans, going around buying houses, pumping up rent, selling their companies off, selling the properties off for a profit while Delawareans can't get an affordable place to live.
Thank you very much. And I will say, Mr. Meyer, that as a Delawarean, that scares me, these equity firms that are buying up these houses in the neighborhoods more than a lot of other. Now, a lot of things keep me up at night, but that is definitely one of them. I don't think that we're truly going to understand the consequence of what has happened and what is happening for another year or so. We're seeing it now. But when people just can't get a modest home, they're just not going to be able to because of these investment firms that bought it up. So I understand where you're coming from there. Sorry for adding my 2 cents. Next, Mr. Williamson.
It's a good 2 cents. It's well money spent. Okay, eviction. Same, foreclosure. It's a hurtful event. On the other side, you do have a landlord that is also trying to pay their mortgages and their taxes and whatever they have to keep going to keep that home there available for providing it for a family. So with not wanting to traumatize children and have them to be homeless, we have to look diligently into every facet that can be possible and have the family stay where they are if the family is doing their part right. Some of these evictions are done by people who are just migratory from place to place to place, and that makes our numbers shoot up way high. We have to start doing better education to allow the good families that want to rent property to have good jobs. We have to increase the jobs availabilities for these families. And for these migratory eviction jumpers, we do need to start corralling them into a certain place and letting people know who not to start to rent into and to find them a solution other than just burning up the affordable renting
Thank you, Mr. Williams.
availabilities to other families. Thank you.
No problem. Mr. Omer.
No, thanks, Carl, and thanks for this question. I mean, a lot of folks in Delaware don't realize, like, we're typically in the top 3 highest rates of eviction in the country, like South Carolina, Virginia, and a couple other states. And like, there's a very hard conversation. It's not a very polite conversation, but we saw landlords jacking rent 20-25% during COVID, forcing folks out of their homes. We saw all kinds of investors, as we've talked about, kind of coming in, buying up properties, again, trying to just make them cash registers, and just move as much money through them as they possibly can. The legislature did a big thing a couple of years ago. They had a tenant bill of rights that Brian Townsend and Mimi Brown ran, trying to make sure that folks had access to lawyers during eviction proceedings. They were trying to level the playing field because most of the property owners had lawyers, but a lot of the tenants didn't. We have to have a conversation about rent stabilization. 12 states already have some level of kind of a limit on how much you can jack up rent, and it's usually cost of inflation plus some high percentage. I mean, it has to be a reasonable rate of return. There's a fair way to do it. Larry Lambert and Eric Morrison are working on some stuff right now trying to figure this out. But folks can't earn enough money if their rent's going up 20% and they get a 3% raise, if any raise, right? They're never going to catch up. We have to have this hard conversation. It's got to happen in Dover this year.
Thank you. Please pass your cards over. And we can move to the next question. In March of this year, the Delaware Roundtable published an investment agenda which serves as a blueprint for the state's economic development. If elected, what specific steps will you take to ensure the successful implementation of that agenda? How would you work with legislature and community organizations to make this happen? And I would like to add one caveat to this question. So far, I am pretty good at listening. I have not heard a lot about bipartisanship. And I think with the issues that we're having now in regards to everything that's going on, we have some serious stuff. 11% when it comes to eviction rates. I was told by a colleague about the cost of health care last week, and it's crazy. And we're not going to do this as a one-party system. So Kerwin's addition to this question is, how do we plan to work on this from a bipartisan standpoint? Okay, and who starts this time? I believe it is the Lieutenant Governor.
Wow. Well, let me tell you, the investment agenda is really important for all people. Equity runs through this, and bipartisanship has been part of my lifeblood as a successful legislator. Being able to have 1,000 bills that I co-sponsored and sponsored, you have to know how to get to W with all. Whether we're going to reform our education numbers, which we need to, the Business Future Council for our agenda for our states growing our gross domestic product. It has to happen across the aisle. We have to be investing in new future jobs, STEM. I lead the National Women Mentors. I've led the National Lieutenant Governors. I'm competitive. The future agenda is looking at healthcare, nimble, having also investment in biofarm and manufacturing, expanding our port. The only way we do this is collectively moving our state forward. I'm very proud of Delaware, and I'm very proud of the initiatives that we've taken, but we're going to have to reform our education formula, continue to get the best schools, invest in early education, and continue to make sure businesses have the health care that they can afford. The Business Roundtable, with the investments into the future, are very much focused on those items that affect each and every one of us, in this room. And we'll talk more later. Time's up.
Thank you very much. Mr. Meyer?
What's the first question employers ask when they're competing between states and they come to speak to a county executive about moving to their business to Newcastle County? They want to know about the schools. They want to know about the talent that's being produced. They want to know about where their employers' children can go to school, good public school. When the Annie E. Casey Foundation is rating our schools the 46th in the country, when we have 17 public schools in Little Delaware with single-digit proficiency in reading and math, I don't know how you have any comprehensive economic development. This is something that's been talked about for years, decades. What we've never done is elected a teacher as governor, someone who's been there in the classroom, who has some ideas about how to fix it. In terms of economic development dollars, I have a whole bunch of ideas about getting monies into communities, things we've done at the county, but really scaling them up, working with Ayanna Khan of the Black Chamber of Commerce, working with Van at True Access Capital, things we are doing today, but instead of making it single millions of dollars, making it tens of millions of dollars to dramatically impact opportunities to grow a small business here across our state.
Thank you, Mr. Meyer. Mr. Williamson.
I believe we hit the bipartisanship part of this. So you know, that's what brought me here. The Republican Party in the Legislation Hall did not have a say. We have a few good people representing the people in there for the Republican Party, but they were not having their voices heard. Bills were being passed without any negotiating, debating, or anything between them. So I said that I would stand up and at least try to get their voices heard. That was for Mike, as for other people that have represented the communities there at Legislation Hall. I do want to say real quick in my last seconds that throwing money at organizations, just keep throwing, where this money's going to come from. We have to put a restraint on just saying to get a easy word in that we're going to throw money at the issue. There isn't money just to be thrown out to every issue. We have to refine what the issues are and solve the issues so that the issues will fund themselves, not just be off of the hardworking taxpayers' wallet. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Romero. Mr. Romero.
Right. The investment agenda kind of isn't your kind of parents' business roundtable kind of document. If folks haven't had a chance to look at it, it's actually worth a read. There's three major parts to it. The first part is around innovation and entrepreneurship. The second piece is around workforce development and kind of the talent, increasing and advancing talent initiatives. And then the third piece is around long-term competitiveness. And each of those are obviously areas that have huge kind of nonpartisan agreement. You know, on the innovation and entrepreneurship, we are a place that has had so many innovative ideas that have come to fruition here. I mean, one of our corporate legacies is obviously some of the pollution we're dealing with, but there's also a legacy of incredible patents. What we don't have a legacy of is actually entrepreneurship, of taking that idea from a concept into an actual new company. And so there's a lot of opportunities for that. And so blending our kind of commitment to small businesses, making sure we're supporting entrepreneurs, investing in research and development, investing in commercialization. UD is doing some amazing things, as is DSU. On the workforce thing, this is probably the part I'm most excited about. they actually talk about early childhood education and pre-K as being one of the conditions to create exactly what Matt was talking about, this continuum of making sure we have the talent here to have a really world-class economy. And so you have a lot of folks up here that have been talking about this. This could be absolutely transformative, and then having a workforce development board that's a little more integrated with the governor's office. It's a huge agenda, Kerwin. That's a 60-second it's a 30-page document. Anyways, great stuff.
I apologize. Next, we will have Mr. Ramon.
Thank you, sir. For me, it's, again, a matter of problem resolution. What you have when you become a governor is you have the power to place every single person who's in your cabinet. That's a lot of secretary positions, a lot of people who have been around for a very long time, a lot of institutional knowledge of this is the way we do things, a lot of blinders on that don't see the issues that face our state. Unfortunately, in politics, the most solid way to have stability in a politician's life and career is to create the problems that they eventually take credit for solving. What I would suggest is we implement a plan that takes advantage of our geographic location from Boston down to Virginia, that reduces the regulatory environment that's strangling our businesses, that fixes our schools, not puts another Band-Aid on year after year after year. And we can only do that with fresh eyes. You mentioned bipartisanship. I'm the bipartisanship person. I'm the leader in the minority of the last two nearly extinct Republicans in Newcastle County, but find a way to work with the Democrats across the table. Oh, sorry. Didn't look that way.
Quick. Okay. I was informed that previous one candidate directly addressed another candidate. When that occurs, we have to allow for the candidate that it was addressed in order an ability to respond. I just work here, man. Yeah. Even Steven, playground rules, just like we said, we're fine.
So I will address in a way that's probably not traditional for politicians. I read the rules, and I did not mean to disparage Matt in any way, stating about bipartisanship and how many people were in the thing. It was just a reality. I got a little bit concerned that there was a field that wasn't addressed. Did it the wrong way? I was wrong. And he also said to me gently after he made his statement, I didn't mean to say you were stupid. I was just quoting the quote. So we're good. The parkland's done. We're all set.
No, we're not good, Mike. We're not good.
We're not good.
This is a
florist, ladies and gentlemen. This is a florist.
I think that, first of all, Mike Ramon, we've had a very good working relationship in the county in my time, but I think it's important debates be vibrant discussion, so I disagree with him. I can't figure out exactly what he said that I disagree with yet, but there are things I disagree with.
And you all get to see what I endure as the lone woman. I'm like the mom in the front of the station wagon at all the debates. Thank you, gentlemen.
Okay, next question. Mr. Meyer, this is for you. When Governor Carney created the Delaware Prosperity Partnership, the DPP, responsible for state's economic development activities, the Delaware Division of Small Business was left within the state with an inadequate structure and resources to effectively support the needs of small businesses and entrepreneurs within the state of Delaware. If elected as governor, how would you redefine and retool the Division of Small Business to increase its outreach and impact on the state's entrepreneurial ecosystem?
We need to make this the #1 place in the country to start and grow a business. I like to say this was the #1 place in the country to start and grow a business in 1802, when E.I. DuPont on the banks of the Brandywine started what became the largest corporation in the world, the DuPont Company. We've lost some of that. We're going to look to enhance our Division of Small Business with resources like it's never had before. I like what Governor Carney did, starting what's called the EDGE grant program, providing small grants to startups. What we need is an EDGE 2.0. The only problem that startups and innovators don't just have immediate cash needs. They have all sorts of other needs. They need low-interest financing. They need customers. They need workers. They need facilities. We need a division of small business like Ben Franklin Technology Partners has done in Pennsylvania, like Medco has done in Maryland. There are examples out there of how we can truly provide an ecosystem for companies to start and grow here, so we don't need to spend all our tax money trying to attract companies that started elsewhere.
Mr. Williamson.
Yeah, for starting your own business, we need to increase the education back into school-age children. Let them know that there is an option to find your passion and to have that passion fulfilled, to go a route through your education that will lead you the pathway to starting your own business. Yes, we can have government lend money to help grow your business. We can lend the money to help start your business, but we should not be in the business of giving money to people who want to make a business out of starting business that fail. There has to be the clarity of the success that will be done by this business. Thank you.
Well done. Okay. Next will be Mr. Romero.
Right. I mean, look, one of the things that kind of inelegantly happened when the partnership project was created is that obviously the Department of Economic Development kind of went away, but these were these kind of stranded programs in the Division of Small Business. And I think one of the opportunities is actually for the next governor to actually elevate that division to a department. Because if we want to send a signal that, half the business growth in the state is from small businesses, well over, 2/3 of the employees and kind of the future growth is going to be small businesses, having it at the right level is going to matter. Now, the next piece is the content. Because right now, the Department of State's kind of a catch-all for a whole bunch of things. So like the Division of Small Business actually has the tourism office in it, which doesn't necessarily make a ton of sense. That obviously should be elevated as well. There's some things you have to go to the partnership project for, like trying to find a site for a brownfield redevelopment. There's other things you have to go to the Division of Corporations for in terms of like licensing. You got to go to different agencies. I want the Division of Small Business, the Department of Small Business, to really be focused on the concierge service. So just like a Fortune 500 company that's thinking about growing jobs here gets all kinds of additional attention, folks can come in and make sure they know exactly what permits they need. Someone's going to help them through the process, whether it's through the county, through the state, making sure that all those pieces are really getting the same level of attention you would if you were a massive international corporation.
Okay. Mr. Ramon.
If we want to get back to a state that a 20-year-old can make an $8,000 loan and 40-something years later have 200 employees that you sign the front of the check for, not running in signing the back of the check, you need to get somebody who went through that experience to be able to verbalize the things that made that happen. We need to stop setting up winners and losers and giving out money to one sector because they're going to create jobs, but nobody realizes the jobs they're creating are the guy he just put out of business because he didn't have the competitive advantage the state gave him, and then he just takes his employees. We need to target sectors that aren't in Delaware at the viability as we did with Pete DuPont and the corporate structure. We need to target biotech. We need to target fintech. Become a juggernaut because of the geography of where our state is and the dynamics of us being able to do things faster in government. New eyes, new energy, new direction.
Thank you. Lieutenant Governor.
Well, it's important. During the pandemic resurgence, I had the opportunity to lead the initiative in the state, and I listened to small business, and that's where we grew the Black leaders, the faith leaders, the community, through community, entrepreneurship. We have, through ARPA, the U.S. Treasury has given us $60 million for 100 EDGE grants this past year. We will do better. Prosperity Partnership, great idea, but we got to trickle it down and expand those offices. We need to be looking at innovation. As I look, and I'm competitive, I look at my colleagues across this country, when I'm talking to Governor Cooper in North Carolina, I want to take his biofarm. I want to become the research triangle here, leading the National Million Women Mentors. That is for Black and brown youth, fintech, global tech, and blue-collar manufacturing here at our port. We have to do better. I believe in aerospace, manufacturing components. We got a fantastic opportunity in Kent County to grow into those areas, and you need a leader who is at the table, ready to lead and understands those development pieces. The gig economy, the new economy for youth has to happen, and it has to start through Black, brown communities, elevating all of us.
Thank you. And gig economy just isn't youth, right? It's everybody. I know so many friends of mine that with so many degrees and everything else, and they're gigging. You know, it is what it is. It's a sign of the times. This is going to be one of the last questions before we go to the note cards. And I have a pleasure, an absolute pleasure to have my mentee with me, Gregory Earl, a brand new junior at Middletown High School and an aspiring politician. So hopefully he's going to be on the stage up there with signs out as soon as possible. And yes, he is my mentee, okay? I see the looks, all right? So I'm excited, and I want him an opportunity to ask the last question, okay? Is that okay with everybody up there?
Absolutely.
Okay. Mr. Earl?
Good evening. Mr. Williamson, this question is for you. Access to affordable housing, transportation, and childcare are three of the biggest barriers to securing a job and keeping that job, especially for low-income families. As governor, what specific steps would you take to make equitable investments in early childhood education to increase access and income and improve outcomes for children in the state? What specific steps would you take to address the state's dismal public transportation?
Very good. Easy answer, which is the answer that should be the most intelligent, is to go to the heads of each of those sectors that were mentioned and find out their input. They run their business or their transportation department, their housing department. They control that. They would know how to better serve. To make a mandate or a government decision to limit what their growth could potential be would be negative. So I would say first you have to get clarity on the input of what the problem is and where the improvements need to lie through the people that have the intelligence and the hands-on experience to know what it takes to repair it. Throwing money at it, not always the right answer. And I think I've said that a couple of times tonight, and we do have to figure out what our budget allows. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. O'Meara.
Yeah, thank you so much for the question. Like, I think there's kind of the two pieces to it, the child care piece and then the transit piece. On the child care side, we're one of the only states that kind of has big Democratic majorities that hasn't made huge advances in pre-K. And if we were able to move most 3- and 4-year-olds into the pre-K system, that would reduce the pressures on the rest of the child care apparatus. We've made some progress the last couple of years trying to raise reimbursement rates, which is great. They're still not enough. We still treat our nonprofit partners like they're doing it like without having to actually pay their employees. I mean, there's all kinds of shortcomings in terms of the amount of resources we need to make sure that child care is affordable. So I think a combination of subsidies and pre-K is the key. On the transit side, we've been talking for a long time around, how do we connect the different systems in the region? So how do we have the MARC system in Maryland connect to the SEPTA system, and making sure folks have more options to be able to get to work in different ways. We've come close with some pieces in the new transit station in Newark, the new transit station in Claymont allow us to put this vision together. There's also been discussions about high-speed rail kind of coming out of Delaware directly. I do think that the combination of rail to get people to where they work, as well as better busing systems that actually kind of go to the right employment centers would be transformative. We've got to make sure they're cost-effective and available for folks.
Thank you. Mr. Ramon.
Thank you. That was a great question. Awesome. You will be running for something someday. But more to the answer, I think the answer is, I hate to say it, but I keep focusing on the same thing. It's been 32 years of the same thing over and over and expecting a different result. That's called insanity. We need to do things different. Child care facilities, many, are small businesses. How about we talk about lowering gross receipts tax? How about we talk about simplifying the personal income tax? How about we talk about linking people's personal income tax to their need of doing child care and enhance their money back? Why don't we talk about creating spots that people can make more money by not working, and then when they try to go back, they get hit so bad they can't afford to go back to work. We are missing employees. We are missing thriving businesses. We have lost so much. If we want to resolve it, we need a new set of eyes in the governor's house from a different party that brings balance and conversation.
Thank you, Mr. Ramon. Lieutenant Governor.
Wow, it's an important subject. Thank you. You've got the best voice, too. So you can either be on the radio or television. I have to just say that the early education is important. 1,825 days, 90% of a child's brain is developed. It is a game changer. We have invested the largest amount in early ed, purchase of care. It is a game changer, a view that I will bring. You're talking social determinants, young man. That's been my life as a public health career educator, as a nurse. That's where things change. We got to have the transportation people can afford. We have to be able to bring new advance and technology to persons in our community who are elder and disabled. There's challenges there. I have to say that the pay is important. We have created a pathway, anyone listening, for anyone who wants to go from paraprofessional to educator, and also at Del State, the first in the country, we are training our learning, our individuals who are in childcare, who are able to go forward to get a degree. We have to do this. We have moved from 3 big divisions down to 1. We've created an early office of learning, and having led the Hunt Institute Task Force, I am confident we're going to get there and address those social determinants.
Thank you so much. Mr. Meyer.
Thank you, and thank you for not running against me this year. I appreciate it. Look, I have a 6-month-old at home. Yesterday, he tried solids for the first time. It didn't go so well. We'll see how today goes. But I think just about every morning, afternoon, and night, what it's like for parents who don't have the resource. It is expensive, y'all, to raise a child just at 6 months. And as we look down the road, it's getting more and more expensive. You go to childcare providers, private childcare providers, and Amazon workers packing our boxes are making more than a lot of those people who are spending a lot of time raising our children. We need to provide incentives for private companies, large private employers, to provide on-site childcare. We need to provide assistance for childcare providers. And we have to look particularly in our most vulnerable communities to assist parents from the age of 0 with home visiting nursing programs like the Nurse Family Partnership. We're going to look to do it statewide. I didn't get a chance to talk about transportation. DART Uber service trained statewide.
Thank you. That concludes the overall question portion. We're going to go to the note cards now. Thank you again, Mr. Gregory Earl, for your assistance. We appreciate it. Rising Junior. This is one of the questions, and I want to be honest, it's my question too. And this is in regards to public education and funding. I have been fairly disappointed over the summer in regards to public education, in regards to Newcastle County and throughout. I think that we can do a better job with some of the districts here. I want to know, and this person also wants to know, is what is your plans and visions to help revitalize public education K through 12? Investment in education leads to economic growth. I completely agree with that. Who is part of this plan in the implementation of the plan? So who would you have? What department would you have working directly to that? Great question. And would you involve frontline workers such as teachers, et cetera, to be a part? Please write bigger. I'm getting older. It's a great question. I have not been happy. I know that after talking to a lot of you up there that you're not happy either. And I'm very interested to know your thoughts on this. And Mr. O'Mara, we'll start with you.
No, thanks, Kerwin. Look, I mean, this is the reason I got in. You can't have a strong state unless you have strong schools. And Devin and I were talking about it before. I quote Frederick Douglass a lot that it's much easier to build strong children than it is to repair broken men. And we're failing right now. We call ourselves the first state, but you can't have the 46 performing kind of schools. And like the Lieutenant Governor's been doing amazing work on kind of wraparound services and how do we kind of support the students, right, in like a real way. The biggest challenge we face is that we have a massive funding inequity, right? We have a 1940s formula that delivers the same amount of money for somebody that has is high flying in an AP class as somebody that's experienced incredible trauma, that has experiencing poverty, folks that are multilingual learners, and we've been talking about it for years. We need an additional $600 million to $1.1 billion in our public schools. We need to do it in an equitable way. There's all kinds of redundancies. The school district in Christina is like blowing up right now. I mean, there's all kinds of efficiency you can create. It's not going to be enough to make up the amount of money that's not making it to the classroom right now. And so my commitment to all of you is this will be one of the first things that we do in the administration to make sure there's more equitable funding, because everything flows from that for our kids.
Thank you.
Sorry, Devon. Sorry, D.
Mr. Ramon.
Thank you, Kerwin. I think, again, this is not a problem that started yesterday. Until we start guaranteeing that more money gets into the classroom and not in the administration and the 19 school districts and the superintendent of schools and the Department of Education and the Secretary of Education and the offices and the cars, and we have stopped having schools that are half full and we're still paying for buildings to run, stop or at least revert or reduce the need of a child to have to go to a school where 97% of the children in that school are not going to be at reading ability and have to be social promotion. Stop depriving our children of what they need. They need the majority of every dollar spent on education going into the classroom. They need to stop social promotion, and if they're not ready to go to the next grade, we need to give them another year to get to where they need to get. We need to eliminate the Common Core. We need to stop paying teachers more money to leave the classroom. How crazy is that? The only way they can make more is go into administration. I'd rather them get more to stay as a teacher. Thank you.
Thank you. Lieutenant Governor.
Important issue. I went to public school, K-12. We have to do reforming of the funding formula, continue solid wraparound mental health services, have teacher pay, which we've elevated this past year, continue, but it's more than just the pay. Getting teachers to retain and putting teachers at the most needy schools that have the most experience. That's what I do as a nurse. I put my most experienced nurse at the bedside in the ICU. That's a game changer. Early education, birth to 5, has to happen. That will help with trauma and other preventative services. That will be a long haul way to change our outcomes in education. I am a current career educator. I'm in our schools, whether I'm with my school nurses, whether I'm working in the community, and as a mom of a child who had reading, writing, math disability, I understand there's support services that are necessary. So it doesn't end when the school doors close. We have to have wraparound 365, 24/7. And I'm proud to say I'll create an education council directly in the governor's office, and being the candidate endorsed by the Delaware State Education Association, working really closely with teachers. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Meyer.
Our funding formula in the state was written 80 years ago in the 1940s. Who do you think those people were writing that formula? Do you think they look like the people in this room? What do you think their values were? The problem is that when you follow the funding in our schools today across our state, and especially here in the city of Wilmington, results in tremendous inequities in our schools that produce inequities across our communities and across our state. From my first day, we will work to roll up our sleeves and address the funding formula. Fund based on need in schools and need in classrooms. We're also going to double down and work like never before to make sure money gets to teachers. That's so important because I was once a teacher who saw funding levels increasing, but nothing came to me in my classroom or my neighboring classrooms. We need to fix that as a matter of urgency.
Thank you, Mr. Meyer. Mr. Williamson.
Okay, you've heard me speak a lot about where we don't need to keep throwing money out. This is the area where the money will have the right return. We need to make sure we fund and keep the educational system going and expanding. I am a big believer that we should benefit from the individual voucher system, to where allotment is made for each child, and that child can carry that allotment with their parents' decisions of their career paths and their educational paths to whether it be a charter school, private school, art schools, vocational schools, whatever, that they could carry that. By doing that, it's going to make the system run more like a business. And in business, you get competitive. When you get competitive, you pay more for the employees. The employees are teachers. So you're going to be paying more for good teachers. So there's the incentive for teachers to be teaching their children properly and better. A lot of them do. A lot of them give their heart. But we need to keep that consistent. We need to not lower the bar, and I know my time's up, but there's so much in this subject that really needs to be ascertained. And real quickly.
Time.
I gotta say it. The values from 1940 to now, the values are the same. We all want to prosper. We all have the same family and moral values, and we need to promote more of that and not say that they've all changed and that we have a different outlook. We all have the same values.
I have so much power here.
I'm sorry.
I feel empowered.
I promise
by
I
this
won't do that
position.
again.
Every day, I can tell that I'm respected. No, just kidding. I would like the final question before your closing remarks. And this is a great question that I have not seen out of all the cards that I've done over the past month or so. And this is, everybody's wondering, is it my question? Is it my question? And this is in regards to Delaware's incorporation tax, right? And what are we doing in regards to ensuring that the Elon Musk and all these other folks that incorporate in the state of Delaware stay in the state of Delaware. It is an economic source for us, right? It is something that the Secretary of State, I'm sure, spends the night looking at a ceilings fan thinking, what is it that we can do to ensure that this is the case? And people say, and I think it was Mr. Bullock that said, yeah, well, Tesla with their incorporation tax, I think it's only $250,000 they pay, but that's just one Tesla. If the companies start pulling out of Delaware, that's 250, 250, 250, 250, and it's going to affect us, right? So I hope that it is on the agenda, plug, for all of you, that you understand that this is an issue for Delawareans, and I'm very curious to know your thoughts on that. Who had the last question? I believe it was Mr. O'Meara. Mr. Ramon.
Thank you, Kerwin. This is a perfect question to show the issue that really faces our decision in a few months. People need to have confidence in Delaware's ability to be the corporate capital of the world, and they're losing that, mainly because there's no balance. There's no balance in the decision of who's going into our courts. There's no balance within our state. The first thing I would have done, and I don't think this is Monday night quarterbacking, this is just or Monday morning quarterbacking, this is just what I do in life, is when something didn't go right in our courts with one of the biggest meccas in the world, I would have immediately been on the phone in an office saying, what can we do better? How do we get stronger without losing our balance and our clarity and our focus on being the corporate capital of the world? People need to be confident that we don't wiggle-waggle back and forth with political reds and blues. I'm not red and blue. Everybody knows I'm yellow. Yellow's important to focus on to be bipartisan and solve problems.
Thank you, Mr. Ramon. Lieutenant Governor?
Really important to be a statesperson, and that's what I've demonstrated over my career and during this time. The corporate financial sector created in 1981 and the law is important. We have to continue to have the best judges. We have to have the world-class service in our state, Secretary of State's office. I'll continue to do that, and I understand the legislative corporate processes. I did not stand recently with a corporate TransPerfect when they were here in this state, and because of it, you've seen a lot of negative ads. I've had a bullseye on my back because someone who does not believe in Delaware's corporate law and who's been trying to eliminate that. And so that has been something that I think people need to pay close attention to. It will affect us all. Property taxes, potential for sales tax, if we don't have a third of our budget. But I'm optimistic and I'm hopeful we'll continue with that strong corporate structure, but making sure as we do so that we continue to have equity and the diversity that we have. As we've appointed judges in this state, we have more to do in that area around equity with racial corporation, and we've done that. But folks, this is serious business. This is very serious.
Thank you. Mr. Meyer?
Imagine if we were starting Delaware from scratch. We'd see how much the schools and the hospitals and various programs cost, and we'd split up the cost among taxpayers, and everybody would have to pay their fair share. A little over 100 years ago, New Jersey is where everybody incorporated their company. To paraphrase Hamilton, Everything's legal in New Jersey. Then Woodrow Wilson screwed it up, and Delaware took advantage. And for just about a century, we've been the premier place in the country and now the world to incorporate companies. Because of that, 1/3 of our budget is subsidized by businesses out of state, critical to the viability of our schools, our hospitals, basic systems of our governance. We need to make sure we continue to be on the forefront. We're losing it. We need to make sure we appoint the highest quality judges to Chancery and to our Supreme Court. Over the years, Delaware has been seen as largely apolitical in how it gives out justice, particularly in the business courts. We need to make sure we have leadership that will keep it that way for the foreseeable future.
Thank you, Mr. Meyer. Mr. Williamson.
I am the only one that's really not a politician up here, and I don't know the complete answer, but I will say I have reached out to Elon Musk. I have wrote him a letter and apologized for the state of Delaware for the treatment that he got and the negligence of somebody just making the phone call to him to make sure we can mend bridges before it got out of hand, as you see it did. We need to go out and advertise. We need to go out and speak. We need to go and seek other corporations to come and relocate to Delaware. We can give incentives for them to actually physically move part of their businesses, part of their corporations, part of their industries to Delaware. And I think that would be the best way to help that grow in our corporation thing. And I'm giving your time back. Thank you.
Well done. Next, Mr. O'Meara.
Everyone's kind of said that, this is a huge part of our revenues. And like when folks look to incorporate in Delaware, they're coming for the predictability of the courts. And I think the challenge we have right now is that we have kind of a three-front war that we're facing. We have some companies that don't like some decisions that are raising different kinds of questions. We have federal laws coming from like Senator Warren and Senator Cornyn, kind of in a bipartisan way, trying to reduce our ability to have this kind of corporate franchise. Then you have other states like Nevada, Wyoming, some others that are trying to infringe and kind of have recruit people to their states. Texas is doing more and more. And so the key is going to be making sure that we stay together, right? And I think there are absolutely like legitimate, concerns around the way some decisions are made, the way that some of the proposals that come before the legislature end up getting kind of aired in public ways where they should be discussions that come to unanimous decisions for the good of the system. But this is huge. And like all the commitment we're making around education and all the things we want to add for, all of those conversations become infinitely harder if we lose the franchise. And so I think you're going to need a government that can bring people together to kind of make sure that we understand that we're trying to hold on to this and make sure we're doing things in a smart way to provide that predictability for years to come.
Thank you. Did everyone have a chance? Believe so? Okay, we're going to move to closing remarks now. Mr. Meyer, you won the toss, and so Lieutenant Governor, you'll start, and we'll go backwards from there.
All right, great. Well, thank you all for paying close attention. As a professor, I know it's hard to sit this long in the evening, so I just appreciate the attention. I can say being ready on day one, being experienced, it does matter. These tough issues require someone who's been in the arena, who has the ability to cross the aisle, who can get to consensus, who's led national organizations, and I am competitive. Don't want folks going to Jersey, over into Maryland or PA. I want them to live here, work here, raise their families here. We're going to reform and work on those educational challenges I talked about and bring that early education, childcare, game changer, changing the funding formula, understanding those needs and wraparound services. Education, number two, education goes into our workforce, the economy, addressing what you all have done. And thank you to the sponsors tonight. Each one of you have certain visions and missions that you accomplish around equity. We have to build and bolster small and big business. I think you've heard me talk about that, having that experience. Being someone who was raised on this farm, whose grandmother was my mentor, 8th grade education, she went on to build a business. Having that business, small business background through my family is important, and we need to have that for all of our young adults to career to college. And healthcare, it matters. Having someone who's been in the arena, who fought to keep retiree healthcare in this state, who made changes around telehealth when the parity was before us, and they said we couldn't do telehealth, we brought that. Housing, quality of life. And folks, it matters. I am so humbled to be endorsed by the Democrat Party. I am so humbled to have our governor, 40 other members who have elected officials, and really also our hardworking union members. and members of the Teachers Union and Emily's List and our Troopers Association and the list that has surrounded me with Stonewall for equity and uplifting. It matters. And so when you get in Bethany, you'll get a leader that not only has the experience, but that vision, who will lead us forward collectively with you at the table. You've seen my work. You've seen me demonstrate on the community. And I do want to be our state's second woman governor and America's first nurse governor. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ramon. And I'm sorry I didn't announce it's 2 minutes. Okay.
Thank you, Corinne. I would like to just say thank you to everyone here tonight, and more importantly, thank you to Delaware. Delaware has been a phenomenal state for me and my family. It enabled us to raise our 3 children. It enabled us to have 5 wonderful, beautiful grandchildren, one of which is only a few weeks old now, which is sort of special. And I want Delaware to be the state for them that it was for me, to be able to open a business at 20-something years old and actually end up with hundreds of employees and working very hard throughout the state of Delaware. Delawareans have been good to our family. I felt it was time to give back. I served in the House for 16 years trying to bring business development and common sense, but unfortunately, we have one-party rule. We have one party that has the governor's office for 32 years. We have one party that has every single statewide office in our state. We have one party that has a supermajority in the Senate. We have one party that has a majority in the House. We have one party that has almost every position in Wilmington and Newcastle County. You heard a lot of solutions today. You heard a lot of ideas. If you can't do it with everybody from your own party, how are you going to work across the aisle? I'm not here to be a partisan. I'm here to be a servant. And the only way you solve problems is from the middle out, not from the extremes in. I'll say this, and I'll say it very simple. I will work for you. I will absolutely do my best to do problem resolution, which is a talent I think I've gained over many years in business. I will be a fresh set of eyes. I will bring a fresh cabinet in that is trying to fix the issues with maybe one set of eyes looking at judges or one set of eyes looking at bills and the other party's bills sitting in drawers. My bill to reduce the personal income tax, to reduce the property tax, to help small businesses get into business, to initiate an environment to change our schools are all still sitting in drawers. I won't have anyone's bill sit in a drawer. We'll work together as a team. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ramon. Mr. Romero.
Great. No, thank you, Cronin. Thank you, everyone. In between the great remarks today, I've been enjoying some of the amazing artwork, and obviously I'm drawn to the jazz musicians all across the room. But the row above it is actually it's something called the Parthenon frieze. It was the first time ever in world history that like regular people were put into art, and then the Brits stole it. It's in the British Museum right now. They stole it from the Greeks. But it was the first time that regular folks were put into a piece of art. And the idea was that the Athenians thought they were stronger together. And it wasn't an equitable society. I mean, obviously, I'm not drawing a full comparison. But having women and children and adults in that artwork, we have 2 Delawares right now. We just have a lot of folks that are being left behind because we have policies and policymakers that are so driven by the kind of lobbyist culture, kind of the secrecy culture that we see in Dover, that a lot of the best ideas aren't making it to the floor. And like, I want to be a governor that brings everyone together, leaves absolutely no one behind. Right now, to be in a small state like this with the wealth that we have, to have 39,000 kids that are living in poverty, to have 75,000 kids that can't read, to have 109,000 families that can't afford their housing, to have 150,000 folks that are struggling with healthcare costs, we can do better. But it's going to require a new generation of leadership that's willing to take on some of these special interests. We need massive reform in this state. We're watching governors in other states with 1-vote majorities, 1-vote Democratic majorities implement incredible change. Yet we're afraid to, because we're not willing to speak truth, that we're not doing as well. If we're going to call ourselves the first state, it can't just be for something that happened in the 18th century. It has because we're aspiring to be the first state of the 21st century. That means leading on education, leading on housing and healthcare, leading on the full suite of reforms around climate and environmental justice, making sure that we enshrine our constitutional rights, not just in code, but in our Constitution. So, if there is Republican control, sorry, Mike, that they can't take away our fundamental rights with 1 vote, as we've seen in other states all across the region. There's a huge opportunity for transformational change. Governors across the country would die for those types of Democratic majorities that we have here in Delaware. We take them for granted. And Tim Walz said the other day, when you have political capital, spend it. I want to spend that capital on our kids to make sure no child is left behind. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Romero. Mr. Williamson.
Well, I hope you guys enjoyed being here and everything, and I appreciate you guys letting us have our say up here, and hope we have at least broadened your horizon in what we have done. And just kind of want to say that, with the economy the way it is and the way things are being ran in Delaware, I'm hearing a lot of things about what the other opponents here are going to do. Well, they are already in position that they should have already done. That's what I want you all to know, that I am a doer. I get the job done. I go out, I find the problems that need to be corrected. I will research to find out where money is being wasted. I will refine the budget. I will refine the methods. I will seek out those that are abusing the system. I am so much wanting less of the government overreach that is hurting our economy and our people in the state, that are holding them back from producing a well-rounded family and the transportation needs. We have to have an organization of government oversight here in Delaware. There has already been so much corruption going on that money has been disappearing, as in with the unemployment office and other food stamp capabilities have lost their funding, and I'm watching my time. I do want to say, too, that anybody that wants to throw in extra taxes on those that are making do wealthy here in Delaware, that are making, say, $67 million, that even if it's $6.7 million or $67,000, they need to not be overtaxed. They need not to have an increase. Those are the people that are providing the jobs here in Delaware. We don't want to run them out of state, because people with that kind of money will flee, and then we will be in the same boat of losing the economy tax dollars that are coming in. Thank you. Have a great evening.
Mr.
Be home safe.
Mr. Meyer.
Yeah, thank you, Kerwin. Thank you, Ms. Sargent, and everyone for coming here tonight. My wife is an emergency room doctor, and she had a shift a few nights ago at Christiana Care, where she works. She came home late at night, and I talked to her in the morning about her shift the night before. She said for most of her 8-hour shift, there were over 80 people in the waiting room at Christiana Care. When I travel the state, I go to Kent and Sussex County, issues of education, housing, healthcare, cost of living that I know here for many people here in Wilmington and across our county are at crisis levels, are even worse elsewhere in the state. We have a crisis in so many ways. I know as county executive, I learned quickly in my first elected office that when you sit at the governance table, so often, too often, the people sitting around the table are special interests who are in it for themselves, often have some financial incentive. We're seeing some of that in this election. Special interests that want to clutch on to government, that don't want changes to make these to fix these problems for Delawareans. A little over a year ago, we started this as the dark horse outsider. People said I had no chance, similar to 8 years ago. Since then, we've had more financial contributions to our campaign than anyone running for governor in this state in 16 years. We've had more people volunteer to work for our campaign than anyone running for governor in 16 years. We had, I think, 30 people knocking on doors across our state tonight. Please join our movement. Polls show we're doing great. We're doing great because it's not about me. It's not about any of these people up here. And it's certainly not about special interests funding these outside PACs. It's about the people who are all given what they can to make a better Delaware, to make a better healthcare system, to make a better education system, and make housing across our state affordable and a right for everyone. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Meyer. And thank you, candidates. Let's have a round of applause.
Thank you.
Okay. We'll do a group photo. Candidates, we'll do a group photo after this. Thank you again for your civility. And thank you, everyone, for joining us for this discussion. Give yourselves a round of applause.